Hi, Doug.
Hey, I saw you on, so I figured I would jump in and say hi. So,
I'm so happy to see you here.
yeah, we haven't got a chance to talk much. So I was like, do I put stuff in the comments on LinkedIn Live or should I just join? So I did the thing that you were mentioning, like just copy and paste it into the URL, jump in, and then we can have a chat or something.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's I'm excited though, because I just woke up this morning and I'm like, you know what? I want to do something different. And this is it. So here we are.
Yeah, it's hard to do a Q&A session though. I know I've had a couple of them, and I usually try to give like a list of different things that people can really ask me or to start the conversation. Or I've actually had a way to, it's kind of gamifying it, right? Like if you ask yourself your own questions, like somebody in the random audience asked me this question. And what it does is it really opens up the doors so people can go, oh, wait, if somebody else asked that, I can ask that because we have that very human issue of I don't want to sound dumb when I'm talking to people. So.
No, that's a good one. In fact, I mean, actually a good segue into what I was thinking I'll talk about if all else fails is, can you use AI for doing data analysis? I mean, yes, there are tools, but I mean like basic, if you don't want to go out and buy a tool or get a tool built, because you don't want something to be built unless you know what questions you need answered, right? So what is your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of AI, especially Gen AI, revolves a lot around grounding, right? Then there are some models that are out there that have some good analytics, but they also have been very finely tuned for that. Now, when bringing something into your enterprise, yeah, you need to be careful. And really, where all that's heading is dealing with ontologies. And I've talked to many in the space lately. Finally, we're all moving to the fact that ontologies are key because it's understanding that data. It's understanding the what, where, and the why of the data, so that we can then go, okay, internally, if I'm Coca-Cola, for example, I want to be able to have conversations, but I don't want my intellectual property getting out. I don't want people to know the secret code to how to make Coca-Cola, but I do want people to be able to actually ask questions around it to know what groups they're part of, what entity they're a part of, where that defines, how that drills down to know like who are the people and who do we enact or enable or empower to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, for most people though, I mean, because you have more enterprise experience, that's one of the reasons I thought, I mean, it's a good conversation to have, regardless of the original purpose, but it'll still help people.
Yeah.
Um, is that when most of us think about data, and this is also based on some of the conversations I've had with business owners, they don't know what to look for, right? So one of the things is that now that we can so easily collect massive amounts of data, we collect it. And then it's just a question of, well, I got 200 gigabytes of data, but I don't know what to do with it, right? So how can leaders and business owners figure out what to focus on?
Well, again, it's like breaking down the data. Like if you have 200 gigabytes of data, like what is the data? Is it nebulous data? Is it structured, unstructured? A lot of companies still, you can ask every company and they'll say, oh, we do structured and unstructured. Okay, that's great. And really what you find out is when you dive down into where they're talking about, it is very like companies are utilizing unstructured data very structuredly at the end, like the downstream, when they're doing the sales, when they have it going out. So when it comes to sales and marketing, like it's greatly enabled. There's fantastic things to go there. But when you actually roll that up and go upstream and go, how's your back office doing? How are those siloed teams that you have back there working? And really, what does that look like? And they go, yeah, we just have structured data and everything else is willy-nilly, and people are bringing their own devices, and they're also using GPT or anything on their phone, and we have no idea what they're doing. Like, okay, there's an issue there, and we should probably go figure that out first. But yeah, so to the point of like the data, you have to define it. And if you can't define that and find that unstructured data, pull it apart and find out the reasons why and the layers around there, then it's a matter of enabling that.
Now, what you said just now reminded me of a post. I think Andreas Welsh or somebody must have posted about it yesterday, about a lot of people, a lot of employees adopting AI in the work that they do to make themselves more productive. But they're kind of sort of afraid of coming out and saying that they're doing that because they're afraid that they'll be called out as being lazy, which kind of is counterintuitive to what they're doing, right? They're using some of
Yeah.
these tools for a higher level of productivity, but they're afraid that they're going to come off sounding lazy. And in my head, I keep on thinking, we have leadership coaches and we have AI advisors and AI consultants. And I keep on thinking that there's got to be a space, there's got to be a market, and maybe it's creating that market. But for AI coaches for leadership. So the specifics of how can AI be adopted, right, without compromising the security of the company, but still enabling and empowering those teams to get the best of both worlds, right? Because as a data analyst, I know I can look at an Excel sheet and be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna find out what the trend is, and I know exactly what I'm looking for when I run my Python code. But
Yeah.
if somebody is not in my field, they can still make sense of it if they just ask the right questions. So how do I ask the right questions, you know?
Yeah, it's a very human question, right? And really, I think that kind of goes back to in the last like 5 to maybe even 10 years, there are no more real experts. Like I say that, but like there's a reason behind that. And so people don't consider people experts. If one person goes out there and says, I'm an expert in this, people go, man, you're not an expert in that. It's the same reason why we see, especially here in the United States, maybe it's just because our medical, and our hospital systems aren't the best, but I don't know if I can say that or not, but in general, the aspect of that is like, we don't trust anymore. We've lost that trust layer between everything. Like a doctor will say, this is what you need to do to be better. And you're like, nah, I don't need to take those pills. So like the same thing with experts is, hey, I've seen this in the enterprise space. This is what I'm seeing. This is I could be wrong. I'm a human, like just like everybody else. Like, and I'm also, all humans are biased, and this is why we have biased data. But in general, it's a very human issue to talk through. And if I was to even say, hey, I'm doing executive coaching and I'm going to do all that, like they're going to say, well, why would I listen to Doug? And that's a fine point. Like, why? Now, if hopefully again, we have to ground ourselves as humans. Like, so if we post things on LinkedIn, if we talk about things daily, if we provide newsletters or something, or we talk on things like this and say, this is the person I am, I'm the same person behind the post, I'm authentic, I'm legit, then you can have some validity and say, okay, I'll try it out, right? And so there's it's the human aspect.
It's interesting because you're right. I mean, claiming expertise in the noise that we hear everywhere is a scary thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I keep on flipping back and forth, right? Like for my own profile, it's like, oh, data expert, or did I just not say it? And then I go, well, but I've done it for 25 years. And, not like you said, I'm human. It's not that I can't make mistakes, but at least as compared to majority of the other people, I can see some patterns or know how to quantify those patterns in some way, shape, or
Right.
form. And it's just interesting that, with AI being, I mean, for some of us who've used the automation aspect or the big data aspect for years and years, AI is not new. But the Gen AI and the ability to
Communicate.
exactly the natural language to communicate, it's fascinating, to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So Lynn joined. Hi, Lynn.
I don't
I,
know if
I,
my
I don't
speaker's
I don't know if
on
you
or
had
not.
I don't know if you had a question, or it's your show. I just jumped in.
No, it's not my show. I just, like I said, my duality this morning was, should I create a video or what? And then I'm like, you know what? I have an easier option.
Yeah, just start talking, and if you build it, they will come, right? So
Yeah, sooner or later, one day or another. Beck is joined too. Hi, Beck.
Yeah, I saw that. I wasn't sure if he's a like
Yep.
video.
Yeah, I'm on the move, but I wouldn't miss this. So switching back and forth between mute.
That's okay.
Cool.
So,
Good to have you,
by
man.
the way, if I found what both of you said really interesting about what's an expert, right? And do we trust experts? And Dr. Crudy, you touched upon this too right after Doug. I think there's also some, a trend of people just kind of getting jaded because there is so much noise out there of people saying, I'm an expert without, coming anywhere near close to it. So, people tend to, and I certainly tend to question, okay, what do you actually know? You know what I mean? So yeah, there's just, I think there's just overall fatigue as well, information fatigue, out there by both people pretending to, know what they actually don't, and unfortunately, the ones that do kind of get lost in the noise. At least that's my feeling.
Yeah, the same thing with like books. I don't know how many books I've tried to read lately, and I'm like, this thing was written by ChatGPT or a large language model.
There are a
There's
lot of
no
those out
way.
there.
Yeah, so even, I mean, on the topic of experts, I mean, I almost feel like I have to write a book now just to get people to listen sometimes. I'm like, okay, hey, there's experts out there that have books. They're not experts. But hey, again, you have to validate and do your own trust but verify, and everyone has to, and especially with technology as well as people and just media in general. Like just look at what your source is, and what I don't know if it's like follow the money, but it's like follow like who is this person? What do they get out of this by saying these things? Are they legit?
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
that kind of thing, right?
yeah. But no, follow the money is actually not a bad
It's worked for
habit.
years.
Yeah, it's not a bad habit to have. So I mean, like, just
Yeah.
even small example from my end, there have been, I'm gonna be careful with what I say, but a lot of influencers whose maybe webinars I've joined, or I've had a chance to speak to one on one, and you talk to them and you find out they are promoting something, a product, whatever, simply because they got paid for it, right? So you kind of start scratching on the surface and you find out, okay, what are you actually an expert in if the money was not on the table? You know,
Yeah.
so follow the money is not a bad habit to look at, or bad habit to have. So
Yeah, it is. Now I feel bad for wearing my jacket because I just jumped in. But either way,
I
I,
wasn't
I
pointing
I
fingers.
don't I
That's
don't
okay.
own this company, but I do talk on a YouTube show. But I won't get into that. But either way,
I mean, okay, so because we are talking about expertise, and this is the question that I think both Doug and Beck have the background to help me answer correctly. So I'm just gonna make the most of the resources available to me to answer this question. It's what is your take on upcoming advents of unsupervised machine learning, and what guardrails would you recommend?
unsupervised machine learning. Why are we doing unsupervised machine learning? I mean, some of that's happening with synthetic data, right? And so, and it's felt that we don't have to watch it because the data is grounded on traditional data, again, very biased human data, and then the synthetic side is seen as better. There's apps that Microsoft came out with that said, look, we have a AI model that is built on synthetic data that is to check your actual data to make sure it's less biased, but you're using data that was biased to do synthetic data. Like, it doesn't make much sense. Maybe there's somebody smarter than me that says like, this is why it makes sense and it's amazing. You're crazy. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, show me. But there's risk there because the further we get away and the further we take the human out of the loop, the more that we compute around humans and not with humans, there's massive issues. And this is stuff where I talk about like the autonomous enterprise. It's not a fully autonomous enterprise. I'm talking about how do we enable the people take that human approach, use the empathy, use the emotional intelligence to actually drive better workers because your employees are your first customers. That's the goal. The computing around them and saying like, well, we don't need them and let's get rid of them because they cost money. how does that work when you're trying to sell to those same people that are your employees, that are your customers, that also have customers, that have family, friends, and things that want to also buy these products? It's just like you're eating your own, and that's never been a winning process.
Spot on. Bet. Hey, I don't know. Yeah, wait.
Oh, yeah, sorry, what's up?
Unsupervised machine learning.
Unsupervised machine learning versus supervised machine learning?
Yeah, so like, there's unsupervised machine
Mhm.
learning is gaining more popularity now because,
Mhm.
I mean, in a manner of speaking, like Doug said, it takes the human element out eventually. And should that be something that we should worry about? It's growing, but is it reliable? And if it's not reliable, then what would that mean? What should be the guardrails? Now,
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry. Unsupervised. I mean, that is a deep conversation that can go in many different directions. With unsupervised learning, you are definitely going to lose not just control, but data quality after a while. You're
There's
going
drift,
to,
right? Yeah.
what's that?
There's drift. There's going to be drift.
There's going to be drift. What I was going to relate it to is, the all famous hallucinations, right? Because, and Dr. Crudy and I, and Doug, you and me as well, in our podcast, we were talking about this. A machine can't think. It has lots and lots of data that it thinks is relevant and basically only spits out information based on what it think it knows. And I use the word think very liberally here, right? So if if somebody is not literally supervising it and what's the word I'm looking for? Catering the data in a way that's going to serve a specific purpose, yeah, your output is going to get out of hand, right? Now, you could argue that you could put, checks and balances in place so that the unsupervised learning, goes in a direction, where it's serving a specific purpose. But I mean, I for one definitely do believe, even quote unquote unsupervised learning structures should have some kind of guardrails and supervision with it.
Checks and balances, some kind
Checks
of
and balances, yeah,
QC, yeah, some critical
for
path
sure.
testing. This is where some of the stuff we talk about, like expert agents and stuff, and how like personalities, personas that don't double check like their tribal knowledge, right? They become the SMEs, the domain experts. But when you talk about like large language models and these different ways to leverage that data, 100% what Beck said.
So it's kind of funny you mentioned agents, basically agents, because I've been working on a couple projects that are involving him. Even agents, right? If you really think about it, they're supervised because you have, let's say, one piece that does a specific topic, specific subject, serves a specific purpose, passes that knowledge or passes those results on to another piece in the agent that also does a specific goal, specific task based on the output of the agent before, right? So it's like supervised, unsupervised learning, if that makes sense. And I'm a big fan of that, but not, hey, let me take my hands off the wheel and let the machine do whatever it will.
Yeah, I still think that adds to the point that like we still need more chains. Like chain of thought is not enough. We still need chain of reasoning and chain of custody to know what's being grabbed. Chain of reasoning is going to give us that answer that's not 42. We need a way to say like, what is the meaning of life, and not get 42 and expect dolphins to come tell us the answers. Although as a Raskin and those guys that are doing the animal research thing or talking to animals, which is pretty fantastic, they can talk at them. They don't know what they're saying, but it's still fantastic. But in general, we have to be able to understand the reasoning behind that. And as AI gets smarter or able to do amazing things, we need that Socratic method to be able to teach us back. Like, hey, smart API AI thing, like tell me, like, how did you do that? How did you get to that point? How do I understand that at my level that I'm at now? So that I can learn and level myself up to get to that point. How can I tell my kids how to understand these facts? Like those are the things that we need, and it's not there yet. And for some reason, like I mean, if I was a government official or somebody saying like we need certain standards and whatnot, I'd be like reasoning, and the reasoning is based off the context or the custody of what did you touch. So
In my experience with, and I mean, it kind of repeats what you and Beck were just saying, though, but my experience with data has been, especially in the context of AI and machine learning algorithms, is that they're highly and heavily black boxed. So despite all of my skills at being able to tell what's going on, I get so frustrated when I'm using a machine learning model versus literally it's easier for me to create it from scratch and know exactly what's happening at each stage and fix it, because the black box models are built on so many assumptions, and those assumptions, and this is the part that really boils my blood, is that I don't care. I mean, I know it's live, but it is what it is. It really boils my blood because a lot of these data models, large language models, machine learning models, the data that they're built on is so crappy. And it's from all over the place. Nobody has taken the time to really figure out if it's relevant or not. It's just there. And instead of cleaning it, instead of taking the time to make sure that it actually says what it's, I mean, that it actually reflects reality, the assumption is just because we have so much of it, it must reflect reality. And this is a fallacy that is inbuilt into machine learning models in general. With supervision, the fallacy can be controlled somewhat. But even then, some of the systems that are being used by data engineers, the supervision comes in the form of running a test model on the existing data as a portion of the data, and then testing it on the remaining data, versus saying, hey, you know what? Are these variables valid in the first place? Like if I'm trying to figure out what the temperature is going to be in the United States, and I have data on all the countries of the world, should I necessarily be including every single country in this data? Or should I just focus on what my geography is? And you know, one of the things I said earlier in another podcast or whatever was, it's like you can, if you're looking at how height increases as age increases, you kind of have to put a cutoff on that data at like 18 or 20 years old. Because otherwise it's going to skew your results big time.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff where, I mean, this is so simple that this can be done with just an if-when loop on a machine learning model. But who is there to tell the machine learning model what point to cut it off on?
You just described, Dr. Crudy, why so many people in the AI community are fans of open source material, right?
Yeah. Or open source weights, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, yes, even though open source gives you something that's already kind of baked in, but at least you have the power to take it from there and curate it however, you know, however you please. You know, unfortunately, it does take a certain amount of, you know, knowledge and hands-on experience to do that. But yeah, I can't agree more with you know what you just said, Dr. Goody. It's a problem. It's a problem, and I think the public in general needs to be educated on that. It needs to be educated on the fact that, you know, especially these closed source models. Look, they've been trained on something specific, so you really go in there with an open mind and know that this is not concrete. You know, there's a reason why this thing says to put glue on your pizza in substitute of cheese, and you should be able to call that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's the fact that it has those the weights, the hidden weights of the black box side of it, even
Hidden
with
weights,
API
exactly. Yeah.
calls, and even no matter if you go through Microsoft or you go through Google and you connect to these different models, they're still hidden. They say we're not taking your data. That's fine. That doesn't mean, I mean, I can explain this, but you know, I could be wrong. But like, it doesn't mean that even if OpenAI says we're not taking your data, it doesn't always mean that taking a they're not seeing that data, normalizing it, and then taking the normalized data.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I don't know, but nobody's told me, and I'm kind of still curious. Like, is that happening? Because there's a lot of companies, and especially what I see coming out from Google soon, is they're talking about like everybody's going to have their own like personal kind of Jarvis-y kind of thing, and it's going to be free for everybody, ideally. And but is it free? No, we become the product. We become that commoditization. They're going to mine our data and they're going to do amazing things for it. Yeah, we get some benefit. We get the convenience. Should we use it? Like at the rate that we're going, it seems like that kind of societal trend is happening, and there's real concerns there. To the point that Beck made, is the fact that like we need to make sure people understand this, and how do we do that, and what does that look like? And the best thing to do is talk about it, and then to jump on shows that are randomly going on and say, hey, how's it going? And then we talk about it, right? But the hope is that other people out there would say like, these are the things we should be talking about, and should we get everybody together and talk about it to find some kind of middle ground? Yeah. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I'm trying to, like, just like everybody else. So we'll see what happens.
No, I mean, one of the things that occurred to me when we were saying this, because like economics comes into being so much here. It's like there is no such thing as a free lunch. And the fact that all of these models and AI tools that are being shared for free, even if they're in their limited versions, right? Like OpenAI or Copilot or, what have you. It always begs the question, one, your relevant data, and actually what bothers me more is you can have very relevant information and data, but it's going to get mixed up with people suggesting putting glue on your pizza, for example. And it will dilute any real insight that you might have. I'll just give you a quick example. Like, I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at my post from yesterday evening, where I have this economics book that it's written as a textbook, and I'm trying to kind of write it out for, a business person to be able to read without wanting to fall asleep or burn the book. Right? So, and I don't want it to be like AI written, but it's got each chapter very nicely laid out. I just needed to change the language from the technical jargon to kind of be more user friendly, right? And one of the things that I noticed is, one, AI couldn't do it, but worse, it started getting the non-jargon, hype-driven bullshit, pardon my language, from some blogs or Wikipedia or Investopedia. I'm not saying those things are bad, but those are works in progress, or Reddit. It's like opinion pieces. And the whole point of this was, I know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to help it sound simpler, or more like, instead of having a definition saying with 5 commas in it, let's write it in 5 sentences, right? Like, just as
expand it out. Yeah.
Yeah. But once I said, do not use external sources, that's when the AI started basically going, well, I got nothing. I'm like, you have the material right here. You just have to reword it. You need basic English skills. I mean, it's not that I couldn't have done it. I was just trying to see if there was a faster way to do it,
Well, I mean, there's ways too. Like, I mean, AI does a very good job at like answering the blank page approach. You're like, I don't know where to start. Cool. Here's some data. Here's what I've written. Now use my data to be grounded to understand like, what am I trying to explain here? And then it'll help you kind of get there, and you tailor, tweak, and then you take out all the delves and the pragmatism and blah, blah, blah. And then you finally get past the hype and you go, I'm just trying to explain this. So.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, when I see things like that and I start extrapolating this experience with what a machine learning model can do in an unsupervised environment with data, that's the one where I go, okay, whoa, it can go out of hand so quickly. And if a business is driving its decisions based on what the outputs of these models are, and they don't have anybody really investigating what's going on, it can result in some disastrous situations.
We will see more of that. I do have to jump because I time box all my stuff. That's how I do lots of neat things. So,
For coming on, though. Thank you.
yep, happy to chat, and good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Satyam, did I answer your question?
Sorry, repeat that?
No, this is for Satyam. He
Oh,
asked,
okay. Sorry, I've got weird feedback.
I don't know, do we have any other questions coming in? Probably a longer answer than what you thought it would be, Satyam, but always happy to talk about data. I guess we don't have any other questions.
Can you think of anything that we should be aware of?
I mean, in terms of data and AI and all that.
Yeah, in current environment.
Well, one of the things is that, and I agree with what Doug said earlier, is that having conversations of this sort, whether they're, okay, of course, not spontaneous LinkedIn lives necessarily, but having conversations with other people in the field and asking the right question. That issue of expertise that we also discussed, that is very critical, because there are people who are actually experts at something who are too shy about calling themselves experts because they're like, well, I know what I don't know. And that is always the catch-22 of being an actual expert, is that when you're really good at something, you know what you don't know about it, which makes it kind of like, I can't say I'm an expert because I know how much I don't know about this, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's easier to call yourself an expert when you don't know what you don't know. And I'm not dinging on people calling themselves experts. As you can see on my own profile, I call myself a data expert, but it's just one of those like, you know, like you're my husband, for example. After 20 years, you're like, yeah, okay, you're the data guy. If I say that I am a data expert, you'll say, okay. But in reality, when we think about it, you know I'm really good at data, but what more do you know about it, right? Now, just extrapolate this. At least we know each other on a personal level. What if we don't know someone on a personal level? We kind of just go by what they say or what we believe they're being paid for. And that perception affects how we react and respond to them. So it works the same way with any kind of data, right? I mean, if you remember when the kids were young, when we would take them to the doctor's office, you know, they would tell us, oh, your child is in this percentile, or this much, he has grown in the last 3 months by this much weight, or gotten this much taller. And part of it is because they have the data available to them on hundreds of thousands of observations. And they are the, at least presumed, experts on, you know, childcare or how children would grow health-wise. But on the other hand, if we just ask some like neighbor, what should my kid look like at this age? Or I forget neighbors. Now that the kids are grown up, when I am talking with somebody else with much younger children, I don't remember. So I'm not going to be able to give a precise answer on what to expect. Because it's like, you know what? Everything between the time that they were born and they were about 18 months old, I have no memory of. Because if I remembered that, I wouldn't have had a second child. So there's always that aspect of, we collect data based on what our current interests are. And that is something that I would suggest for every business out there to keep in mind. Are you collecting data that connects with what your objectives are? Or are you just like, oh yeah, you know what, I have a subscription or whatever to some cloud server where I can just store unlimited amounts of data, which by the way does cost a lot of money, but sometimes it just gets unseen. And then instead of cutting down on what you're collecting, you just keep collecting more and more, and it starts losing value. Right? So one of the things that I would say is that when you think about data, think about how your own brain works. Your brain, the reason you need sleep at night is because your brain collects all the visual, all the auditory, all the sensory, all the experiential data for you throughout the day. However, it overloads your system because it's a lot of information. Some of it you're conscious about, some of it you're not. Like right now, you could be looking out the window and your brain did observe the tree outside the window, but you didn't consciously see it, right? But your brain still has all that imagery. So what happens at the end of the day when a person goes to sleep, deep sleep is when the brain refreshes and removes all the unnecessary data it has gathered and only keeps the relevant memories in place. One of the reasons why if somebody asks you, what did you eat for dinner the day before yesterday? Unless it was something unusual, you're not going to remember. Or you would have to think harder. Forget, if you ask somebody, what did you eat a month ago? There's no way they're going to remember it. Unless, again, if it was something special, like, oh, you know what? Oh, yeah, I remember a month ago it was XYZ's birthday and we ate cake. That's different. But otherwise, you're not going to remember. Companies need to follow the same pattern when they collect data. Every so often, they need to clean up. Not every part of data that is collected is important. And identifying what needs to be cleaned up needs to be done by people who use that data. This is why you need people. This is why you need to empower your teams. This is why we need to stop siloing. Because I might be in the marketing department and find some data that is useless to marketing, but it might be extremely useful for sales or for finance. So if the data comes together as a uniform organic product that is actually behind the scenes for the company, then it makes sense. Otherwise, all these words are just words. Data-driven, data-informed, whatever you want to call it. Unless the data is handled correctly, unless the data is analyzed correctly, unless the data is revisited correctly, it yields useless information.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, that would be the big thing. I want to see if anybody else has any questions. Otherwise, we're like 45 minutes in and can probably call it.